Hi, welcome to this episode of The Daily. My name is Brendan Malone. Well, late last week there was an article in the New Zealand media, a very important article about a brand new book that is being released by Melinda Tankard-Rice in Australia about the prostitution industry, about the sex industry, and it features a collection of stories from women who are former prostitutes telling their stories about the true and very horrific reality, I'd have to say, of life in the sex industry. The article was really important for a couple of reasons. Number one, it really challenged head-on in a very bold and important way this particular myth that often crops up in the media. You have this sort of glamorization of prostitution that goes on. There's a real downplaying of any risks, or at worst, the prostitution is portrayed as this sort of neutral thing that people can participate in, and the only people who get harmed are perhaps people who shouldn't be involved or who have been coerced, but everyone else is having a fun old time and making lots of money. Well, that's certainly the impression you'd get if you read and watched a lot of the media content and a lot of the popular entertainment content about prostitution. It simply isn't true, though, and this book is really going to be about setting the record straight there and telling some very important home truths about how dark and brutal this industry really truly is, regardless of the legal status of prostitution in a particular country. It will always be a brutal and abusive relationship between a prostitute and a John, because the reality is that the client is purchasing that woman. He is purchasing her for sex. He is purchasing her body to use for his own self-gratification. It is really the lowest and ultimate debasement of a human person, regardless of whether they're volunteered to and are going along with that, regardless of whether they're happy about the amount of money they're receiving, regardless of whether or not there is any sort of physical or coercive abuse going on. This is still a very vile form of debasement of a human person. The other thing that was really good about this article was it really hit the nail on the head when it challenged the current frameworks around prostitution laws that we have, particularly in this country here in New Zealand and Australia. And it laid down the challenge that we really need to look at adopting the Nordic model, which is sometimes referred to as the Swedish model. France, just last week, has actually changed its law and has adopted the Nordic model. And what makes the Nordic model so different is that instead of targeting the prostitutes, it outlaws the purchasing of sex. So the Johns, the men who come to use women for sex, the men who have absolutely no respect for women to the point where they are willing to purchase them and to use them for their own self-gratification, those are the ones that are targeted by the Nordic model. And it's a very effective law. It's worked really well in those countries where they have passed it into law, and it's a good halfway house that actually has a law that is aimed at reducing and moving women on from prostitution by reducing the demand, but it also at the same time it doesn't turn these women who effectively are victimized in a lot of ways in this industry anyway into legal victims, and the law doesn't then actually create all sorts of problems in that regard either. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily.